Preface to the Wisdom of Kabbalah, item 42. And it says here, this thoroughly clarifies the reason for the decline of the levels one below the other during the cascading of the Partzufim from one another. It is because the Bitush of the or Makif and or Pnimi applied in each Partzuf always cancels the last Behinot of Reshimo of Aviut in there. Yet we should know that there are two discernments, the Reshimot that remain in the Masach after its Hizdakchut, the purification. The first is called Reshimo de Aviut. The second is called Reshimo de Hitlabshut, clothing. So, from Ein Sof, where the lights now descend and build the 5 worlds, these 5 degrees of concealment that exist in the will to receive. So, we have actually here in Malkut of Ein Sof, we have 5 degrees of coarseness. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 within 5 of each Partzufim, you have 25. And 25 times 5 equals 125. We have 125 degrees. And these degrees are of lessening of the lights in her. She wants to examine what kind of equivalence of form can it now have with the lights. And that brings out 125 examples, patterns of equivalence of form and potential. And so we should just add that all these lights, all these degrees, everything that happens here until the level of this world, of all that is not considered existent until the souls will come here, who will begin to rise up those degrees and attain the roots in practice. So going on, for instance, once the Masach de Guf of the first Partzuf in Ak has been purified, we said that the last Behina of the Reshimo de Aviut, the Reshimo of Behina Dalet, was lost, and all that remained in the Masach was the Reshimo of Aviut, the Behina Gimel. Yet although the Reshimo of Behina Dalet contains 2 discernments, as we have said, Hitlabshut and Aviut, only the Reshimo de Aviut of Behina Dalet had disappeared from the Masach by that Hizdakchut. But the Reshimo de Hitlabshut of Behina Dalet remained in the Masach and did not disappear from it. So just to bring in an analogy of how to understand this, imagine a sponge, a Masach, filtering water with dirt particles. Now the sponge, the Masach, gets clogged, full of desire, receiving force. And when you clean it, Hizdakchut, the refined part, you rinse out the heaviest dirt, Behina Dalet, which is the strongest desire. Now the sponge can still absorb, but only lighter water, which is a representation of Behina Gimel. It remembers that it once held heavier water, Hitlabshut of Dalet remains, but it can no longer do that. So, the desire is gone, but the imprint of the capacity remains. Each level drops lower because it loses the strongest desire, Aviut, during Bitush. And the Reshimo de Aviut of the highest Behina is cancelled, but the Reshimo de Hitlabshut of that same Behina remains. This is why the next Partzuf starts at a slightly lower level of desire, even though it still carries the memory of a higher light. And now, Reshimo de Hitlabshut refers to a very subtle Behina discernment, a phase from the Reshimo of Behina Dalet, which does not contain sufficient Aviut, coarseness for a zivug dahaka, a coupling, and with the upper light. The Reshimo remains from the last Behina in the Partzuf during its Hizdakchut, the refinement, and are saying that the last Behina disappears from each Partzuf during its Hizdakchut refers only to the Reshimo de Aviut in it. Now going back further on the analogy of the sponge, imagine Reshimo de Hitlabshut, imagine the sponge once absorbed heavy syrup, representing strong light, Behina Dalet. And after it's washed, Hizdakchut, it can no longer absorb syrup. It's too delicate now. The loss of absorbing syrup is like losing the Aviut of Behina Dalet. But the sponge still smells like the syrup. That's the Reshimo de Hitlabshut. It knows in potential what it once held, even though it can't handle it now. So the Reshimo de Aviut is the strength, the desire, the capacity to push back and form a zavug with the light. And Reshimo de Hitlabshut, the trace of the light that once closed the vessel, the memory without force. And during Hizdakchut, only the Aviut disappears. The Hitlabshut always remains. And so, I hope you enjoyed this little study that I'm doing here, sharing on item 42. Very hard to understand. I actually read this over and over and over, breaking it down bit by bit to understand. Do I fully understand? I'm not going to say I do, but the more I review, the more I go over this, I believe it'll internalize within me, and this is the preface to the wisdom of Kabbalah. Shavua Tov.